Hello, everybody. I think we'll give it a few more minutes to allow everybody to log in before we'll start the presentation.
Just waiting on a couple more people, I think. I think we're probably about there if happy to begin.
Sure.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this webinar on Regenerate Power's proposals to build a solar farm at Sedgeford Hall. Thank you for taking the time to join us today to hear about the project. While it's still fairly early in the development of our proposal, it's really important to us to engage with the local community, answer any questions that you may have, and receive your feedback before we finalise our application. Before I introduce Ashley Fromberg from Regenerate Power, I'll just cover a few basic housekeeping points. Firstly, please be advised that this webinar is being recorded and a video of it will be uploaded to the website so that anyone who cannot make this session can still participate in the consultation. If you are a participant, your camera and microphone will not be active during the webinar. The webinar is scheduled to last for 1.5 hours, and we're going to start with a presentation from Regenerate Power, followed by a Q&A session. You can submit questions at any time during the webinar by clicking on the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen and typing your question into the box. If you could ensure that you use the Q&A function rather than the chat button, that would be very helpful, just so that we can keep an eye on all of the questions in one place and ensure that we make sure that we respond to them in turn. Questions will be addressed at the end of the presentation. And if you're not comfortable sharing your question during the webinar, or if you'd like to ask anything after the session is finished, you can contact the team by emailing regeneratepower@quantumpr.co.uk. Details are also on the contact page of the website. That's www.sedgefordhallsolar.co.uk. I'm now going to hand over to Ashley Fromberg and Tamsin Ram from Regenerate Power, who will talk you through the proposals for Sedgeford Hall Solar Farm.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you. Hello, everybody, and welcome. So we're here today to present to you the Sedgeford Hall Solar Project. We're going to show you, we'll explain to you who we are, what we're looking to do here, and share with you some very indicative plans that we have in mind for the scheme. You're joined by, first of all, myself, Ashley Fromberg. I'm the lead project manager on this project. I'm quite excited to finally be here, being able to present this to you, as I've been involved with this project right from the inception of the scheme, from the start. So you know, it's good that we've finally got it to a point that we can present this to the public. Also joined by Tamsin Ram, who is working with us as our ecologist, our landscape architect. She also works very closely with the ecologist, so she can give a bit more of specialist flavour behind some of the measures that we're putting into place. And we're also joined by Colin Murphy, who may have some input during the Q&A session. Colin Murphy has recently joined us in the capacity of Development Director. So first of all, before we get into the presentation, I just want to explain where we are with the project at the moment. So really wanted to emphasize heavily that we're still in design phase. So we haven't finalized the layouts, the specifications, or any of the spec of the technology that we're going to be using. It's very much indicative at this point, and although we've taken some initial studies and have some preliminary layouts and thoughts, the next stage for us is to consult with you, the public, take on board the feedback from the community, which then will help to inform our design of the project, which ultimately we will be submitting into a planning application, a full planning submission. So just following on from that, the information that we're going to provide, it really is to be used as guidance only. It is subject to change, nothing is final, and as I say, we have a good opportunity here to take on board your comments. Just to extend onto that, don't feel that this is your last and only chance to be able to have some input on the project. Once we take all of the comments and feedback, that will inform our design. We'll submit a planning application, which will have a list of appendix documents and plans and elevations of everything that we're installing. And then you'll have another opportunity to comment, which will be run by the local authority. And these documents will be continually and constantly updated throughout the determination process. So introducing Regenerate Power. We are a clean tech development platform. We were formed in 2018, and it was the merger between two other companies, both FlexiGen Limited and Renewable Energy Agency Limited. Our executive team are seasoned renewable energy developers. We, as a company, as Regenerate Power, have large pipelines we are developing in the UK, Italy, and Poland. But the team also have some development experience going into more exotic locations. Certainly the UK team here, we've been developing solar, albeit under different vehicles, for the best part of 10 years. In the UK, we've seen the sort of subsidy rush, so to speak, of projects which were attached to the renewable obligation schemes from 2013 through to 2016. And I think part of the reason we're quite excited about this latest wave of development of renewable energy development is because solar has matured as a technology and has finally got to a point where it stands on its own 2 feet and doesn't need any government or outside subsidy to make it work. So it's a really important point. I think it just shows how far we've come along as an industry to be able to be self-sufficient on a commercial level and really underpin the importance of these schemes to entering the UK energy mix. So Regenerate Power have quite a unique ethos on the way that we approach not just the development of this site, but development across all of the sites within our portfolio. We have adopted a methodology which we are harmonizing energy production and the enhancement of ecosystem services. So we are looking for that synergy between economic activity and stakeholders, local stakeholders in particular. So we see the energy project, in this case it's solar PV and battery storage, as the catalyst to offer up ecological enhancements, landscape restoration measures, and natural climate solutions, which we will go into in a little bit more detail and be a bit more specific on what we're actually proposing here. But I think there is a real opportunity that in the past has been missed by solar developers, where solar developers may look at landscaping measures to do the bare minimum just to kind of screen the site, whereas we are going above and beyond that and really trying to offer something back, not just offering the clean energy benefits, the carbon reduction from producing clean power, but also reconnecting the landscape and offering a real opportunity for biodiversity enhancement. So the Sedgeford Hall scheme, as you can see here, it consists of around 44 hectares, which approximately is a 21 megawatt peak solar scheme. We will be accessing the scheme from the south at this point here, which is between the road that runs between Fring and Ingmere. There are, as I mentioned, battery energy storage included within this project. And just going back to the access, just to clarify, we are yet to confirm the exact route for any vehicle traffic. This is done as part of the design and access statement that we will be submitting in the planning application. We will be taking advice from our transport consultants, liaising with the traffic officers at the local authority. And of course, part of this process now is to understand your views and your feedback. And, if you have any comments or any suggestions with how the traffic management plan should be implemented, then please, submit comments, either send an email into the email address on the Sedgeford Hall solar website, or feel free to ask, make any suggestions into the Q&A or chat function. Just to clarify as well, and I think Michael touched on it, this presentation is recorded. We will be posting it on the Sedgeford Hall Solar website, along with a copy of this presentation. So I'm not going to read through it line for line, as it'll probably bore you quite quickly. So I'm summarizing, but you can find all the information on the website, which will be uploaded in due course, and you can read through the detail on it at your own pace. So why have we picked this location? So really just to go over our site identification process. Anybody who has been involved with schemes of a similar nature will know that it always starts with first of all, where there's possible to connect these schemes to the grid. It's very, very difficult to obtain grid connections for these types of schemes. And we do thorough research in order to find areas that we believe we can get a grid connection. And then when we have identified areas that we can potentially get some grid, we will then use a GIS, Geographic Information System, which is essentially a mapping system where we overlay all of the ecological and national constraints and designations that we want to avoid. So we're talking about things like the green belt. We don't want to be inside the area of outstanding natural beauty, triple SIs, flood zones, a range of different constraints that we will sit outside of, and we will carefully select the best the site which will avoid these designations that prohibit solar and will comply with local policy. And just to clarify, we do have a grid connection for this site. So just some generic points around how solar PV works. You can read through this at your own leisure. Essentially, the solar panels will convert UV light into electricity, which is exported into the grid. So the solar development by nature is temporary. After the 40-year term is up, we will be decommissioning the site and returning the land to its original state. And that is a legal obligation to decommission the site at the end of the term. So to run through how we got to where we are now and the planning process. So the first the first step that we've taken in terms of planning was to, once we had a grid connection and the landowners were on side and wanted to do the scheme with us, we apply for we submit an EIA screening opinion letter, which asks the local authority if the scheme is going to be in need of an environmental impact assessment. If any of you saw, it's worth noting that we actually submitted this for a larger area than we've ended up using. So there is a reduced impact from when that was submitted. The screening said that we will need an EIA. So we, as part of our planning process and the planning application, we'll be submitting environmental impact assessment chapters and complying with the regulations around that. We have undertaken initial studies looking at things like ecology, landscape, flood tests, flood risk analysis, visual impact, traffic management, a range of desktop and site walkover studies that will help to inform our preliminary layout. Once the preliminary layouts have been produced, this is the stage that we're at now, where we will bring it out to you, the public, and show you what we're thinking. And then we take away the comments and the feedback that we receive and look to finalize the design, ready to submit a planning application. So from this, we will be finalizing the design and also going back and completing all of the initial studies that we have done, as we can only get to a certain point without then having the full information that we need to be able to finalize the design, taking into the considerations that are raised here today and in the coming weeks. So I'm not going to touch too much on the ecological enhancements and the following slides, looking at the nature-based solutions that we are incorporating as part of this scheme. Again, you can read these slides in a bit more detail, but it probably makes more sense that in a moment I'll hand over to Tamsin, who can run through the plans and explain where we're coming from, why we're including the measures that we are. I will just highlight that what we're looking to propose here is a tangible and verifiable benefit locally. We want to incorporate something we can really give back with the whether it be ecological enhancement or biodiversity net gain. So as part of the work that we will do, we will be able to put together calculations to calculate the net biodiversity gain. And our early indications from what we're doing are showing that we are going to show a certain percent of net biological gain, biodiversity gain. And we are held accountable to deliver the measures that we're proposing. I'll hand over in a minute. Just one point to bring up on the noise, which is something which tends to come up in these consultations. The nature of solar, the noise produced is negligible. Typically, it will be no more than the background, the surrounding background noise. Before we get on site to actually build the project, we will be required to provide acoustic studies to the local authority. The local authority will check that to ensure that we're not in breach of any of the thresholds that they set. But I think in particular with this site, there's no dwellings close enough that would be affected. So on that note, I'll hand over to you, Tamsin, if you'd like to come in and explain through a bit more about the process of where we've got to and what we're looking to do here.
Hi, yes, thank you. Yes, I'm Tamsin Ram. I work for an environmental consultancy called EDP, which provides environmental information across ecology, heritage, landscape, and various other fields. So that I've been able to work very closely with my colleagues in ecology. So I will attempt to answer questions on ecology as well, but my main specialism is landscape. So when we approach a site such as this, our main aim is to minimise the impacts on the existing landscape, both on its existing landscape character, but also on the visual amenity of people who are using that landscape. And then from an ecology point of view, our aim is to minimise the impact on the ecological diversity of that site, and where possible to enhance that, as Ashley's described. So in order to do that, the way we start is to look at the baseline, to look at what is there already. And this slide is attempting to show that. The white dashed lines show the contours, which show that the site is on a slightly elevated area of land, with land falling away to the north into the valley, and then more gently to the west and south and east, which is quite helpful in that because the site is slightly higher than the surrounding landscape, and there are hedgerows, existing hedgerows at the edge of the site, they help to enclose the site visually. When you're looking up the hill towards the site, it's the boundary hedges that you tend to see. The only places really where you're going to see into the site are where you're set back, so that you're elevated above the site, if that's within, which is close enough for you to see views, but also where the site falls away, as you can see on the eastern side. You can see the contours just cut into the site, and that side of the site sort of just falls away. And also at the southern end of the western boundary, again, you can see a contour just cutting in. And that's where these blue arrows show that there are glimpsed views into the site. This site here, you can see that the red line boundary actually extends further north than the actual site that's being proposed. That was because that was the initial area of study. And when we were doing our landscape assessment, we looked at views from the AONB to the north, where it rises above Sedgeford, to see if there were views back towards the site. Also, this area of the site is obviously closest to the AONB. So in those assessments, we decided that that was the most sensitive part of the site. You can see it also falls away, which potentially allows views into it. So while it wasn't visually prominent, it was perhaps the most sensitive visually area of the site. The brown hatching just to the east of that field shows that there's a localized high point here, which helps to screen the eastern field. And then just to the north, just to the very top of the image here, you can see there's a block of woodland, which helps to provide screening to the western fields. So that's sort of, that's about the visual amenity and where is it possible to see the site from. And then in ecological terms, we use the landscape character assessment that has been prepared for the county and for the district. And that tells us that it's a rolling agricultural landscape of medium to large fields enclosed by hedgerows, with blocks of woodland, which you can see in this plan. They've been highlighted in quite a bright green, and they're very rectilinear, and the field's very rectilinear. And so in trying to provide features that will help to screen and integrate the proposals into the landscape, we've tried to use similar vegetation and also similar forms, so that the screening features themselves don't become the detractors from the landscape character. And that ties in very usefully with our ecology proposals, because these are agricultural fields, quite intensively farmed, so that the main value from ecological terms are the boundary hedgerows and the woodlands, and that the linkages that they provide. So that if we can enhance the existing hedgerows at the site boundary, that will provide both visual screening and integration with the character of the countryside, but it will also contribute to the biodiversity of the site. And rather than just mitigating the changes that we're proposing to go that bit further. So we've proposed where areas of woodland where maybe a hedgerow would be enough to screen, but we thought, well, okay, well, let's put in a bit more woodland to provide ecological links and ecological diversity. Yeah, thank you, Ashley. So this site shows that analysis that we did has then enabled us to develop this plan, where we've used the existing woodland blocks and enlarged the one to the northeast, and we've enhanced all the hedgerows, which we're suggesting that they should be increased to 5 meters wide and managed with occasional trees, so that they integrate with the landscape, but provide a thicker hedge to provide enhanced screening. The site access is right next to the existing reservoir, so that where there's already a security fence along the edge of the road. So we've tried to condense any changes to the character of that lane by keeping all those possible detractors in one place. And I think within the site itself, we've tried to enhance what is currently quite an impoverished habitat for wildlife, intensively farmed agricultural land. We've tried to we've suggested enhancing with species rich grassland. So beneath the panels, that will be shade tolerant grassland, but around the panels where we've got these really quite generous setbacks and buffers, that will be wildflower and grassland mix, which will add to the diversity of that area, especially when tied into the corridors that will be provided by those enhanced hedgerows. I think those are the main matters that we've tried to cover. Unless there's any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Tamsin, and absolutely, you know, if there's any further questions, anything that's raised by that, you know, please bring it up in the Q&A box, and myself or Tamsin can answer those. Just to highlight what this is here as well. So what we're proposing is effectively an area of land which is going to be farmed sympathetically and managed for farmland birds. So this could consist of skylark plots. You can see we've kept a margin of land here, which is for wildflower and grass. So this is just really in addition to the measures that we're putting within the solar red line. You know, we also want to be mitigating anything that is happening within the site and offering something up as extra. So you know, as part of the planning application, when we submit it, we will of course formalise these plans. This is subject to change on where the exact location and how it looks. But I just wanted to give you guys today a bit of a feel for how we're approaching it and what we're going to be doing. So again, welcome any comments and suggestions on that. So just moving on to project benefits, and I think, you know, I'm going to speak more on a macro level here. As a country, or as the United Kingdom, we're well, really globally, we're working to very, very ambitious targets that have been set in order to hit net zero by emissions by 2050. Included within that, we're being measured to hit very strict guidelines by 2030, and I think we deserve a lot of credit in the UK, as we're one of the only countries in Europe, I believe, that have actually halved emissions since the 90s. So we do deserve a bit of a pat on the back for that. But certainly, in order for us to achieve these targets locally, and as you know, the targets that the world are looking to achieve, solar and battery storage will play a massive role within that. And certainly in the UK, solar now, as I mentioned earlier, is can operate on a subsidy-free basis. We're not coming out cap in hand asking for any taxpayer money. And in fact, solar is now the cheapest form of energy. We're roughly around £40 per megawatt hour. Just as comparison, Hinkley, the big nuclear project, the strike price was 92. So you know, battery storage and solar working in joint with wind and other renewable technologies will play a massive role into securing the UK's energy security and reaching the targets, the ambitious targets that we've set. So there's more on that you can read through in your own leisure. So we've touched upon the lifespan, 40 years, and then it will revert back to agricultural use. Community benefit is something that I wanted to bring up because we have not set, you know, we really wanted to come to you, the public, to ask for any suggestions that we can offer as part of our planning applications. We're keen to engage with local stakeholders, whether it be some projects or initiatives, you know, combating fuel poverty. It could be, you know, reinstating a river which had been damaged, or you know, some kind of, you know, investing into a local park, or anything along on those kind of lines, you know, something ideally for us, something tangible, something that is verifiable, that you know will provide a real benefit locally. So we definitely very much looking to offer a community benefit. We will hear your suggestions, and then sort of, you know, put our heads together and figure out what the best solution would be to provide the most impact. So, you know, once again, feel free to add anything into the Q&A or email us on the the Sedgeford Hall Solar website and email in. And just another point on the email address, if you do have any specific queries or questions that you want to bring up with us directly, I appreciate, you know, usually we'd be doing these consultations in person in the local hall. I mean, obviously with the pandemic, it's very odd times at the moment. So, you know, we're kind of having to get used to doing them over virtual consultations for now. But, you know, if you do want to pick up directly with us, the team here at Regenerate, you can email in and we can, you know, assess the questions. And if needed, we're happy to have telephone or Zoom calls. So, to touch upon the timeline, I mean, conservatively, 12 to 16 weeks would be needed for construction. Generally speaking, it's from week 3 or 4 to week 8 is when you're going to be getting most of the deliveries, somewhere in the region of 5 to 10 lorry deliveries a day. And the benefit of, I'll say the benefit, you know, one of the positive things about solar is it requires very little maintenance for the long term. So there is some disruption in the early stage of the construction, but it's a limited period of time in relation to the length of the scheme. Once the project is built, there you may have 1 or 2 vans, you know, discreetly entering the site to check the switchgear or the equipment that is there. So, you know, once it's built, there really won't be any disruption. Okay, I think I covered the point on the community engagement, but please, we really do want to hear from you. And if there's any individual queries, you know, email in and we can arrange something on the telephone or on Zoom. So I think that's everything that we wanted to present for now. We will have a period of time where we'll take on board any comments and suggestions. We'll look to finalise our designs using the information that we've received, and then submit a planning application, which could be anywhere between 2 weeks from now, ambitiously, or you know, could take a little bit longer to implement in there. But you know, certainly we will allow enough time for us to process any questions or points that have been raised, and then help that to inform the design. So I thank you very much for your time. Thank you for listening to us present the scheme. I hope you found it informative, and I'll hand it over to Michael, who will host the Q&A session.
Thanks, Ashley. Thanks for your presentation, and to Tamsin as well. Hopefully that gave everybody a useful introduction to the plans for the site. We've received a number of questions so far, so I'll run through those now. But obviously during this Q&A session, if you have any further questions, please send them in, and we can do our best to answer them while we're on the webinar. The first question, we've had a couple of questions about ecology and biodiversity at the site. So the first one is, could you say more about the expected net gain from biodiversity enhancement?
Yes. Yes, it's a requirement, a legal requirement at the moment, to provide a net gain in biodiversity for applications coming forward. And that would very much be the case on this site. And we've very much aimed to go over and above that, which through some of the measures that we've described, with the additional planting, the sympathetic agricultural land management, and all of those measures. It has been the intention from the start to go over and above what is actually just legally required. We haven't run the full calculations yet. which are really quite complicated. So we've been working towards that, and we're sure that we will exceed the requirement to net gain, but we don't have the actual figures. We generally wait until we're approaching a final site layout before we run those figures, but they will be available within the planning application and in the public domain. And we'll be working with the local authority ecologists as well to ensure that that is all up to scratch, as it would need to be for any application. But as I say, we're aiming to exceed that requirement.
Thank you, Tamsin. And just while we're on the subject of ecology, we've had a couple of further questions as well. Firstly, how will you ensure that that the hedgerows, copses, wildflower and grassland, etc., that are being installed at the site will develop and mature?
Well, again, it will be a requirement of the planning application that landscape proposals are submitted, and a condition. Often those are conditioned with phrases like any dead, dying or failed planting will need to be replaced within the first year of first planting season following failure. And that generally covers the first 5 years after planting, because that's generally the establishment period. So a majority of issues, if they are going to arise, will occur in that time. I think it's considered that after that 5 years, the planting will have established and will be more robust and is less likely to fail. I think with wildflower grassland, it's not as established a science as planting, but we do soil tests to ensure that we're going to use a mix that is most suitable to that soil type. And then it's often as well down to the annual maintenance and how that is undertaken. And again, local authorities will often ask for a copy of a landscape and ecology management plan that ensures that the correct maintenance measures are in place. And because that's a requirement of the planning approval, then if they're not in place, then the local authority can serve an enforcement notice or go through procedure to get them put into place. But it's very much the intention to get them all in place and establishing successfully.
Thank you, Tamsin. And while we're on that subject, just a further question as well, to do with the field adjacent to the site. Who will be responsible for ensuring that there is sympathetic land management and actually carrying that out?
I think that's a question for Ashley.
Yeah. Yeah, coming back to me, I mean, it's a very good question, and it will be a part of the planning permission. So, you know, it will be something that is attached to the planning, and if we are not sympathetically managing that land, then effectively we'll be breaching the planning permission. So, yes, it will be as part of the plan permission that is granted.
Just to clarify that it will be Regenerate who are responsible for managing that site as well.
So in fact, I believe it will be the we will give instructions to the landlord on how that needs to be farmed, and they will ensure that it will be managed. I mean, the planning is always on the land, not on a company.
Sure. Thank you. Another question: when will this public exhibition, so the video and the presentation, be available to view? I think I can probably answer that. We're looking to get these up on the website early next week, I believe. A question about construction, the construction period. During the construction period, will you be closing the Inmere to Fring Road?
Sorry, say it again.
During the construction period, will Regenerate Power be closing the Inmere to Fring Road to allow construction access?
At this stage, we're in the middle of doing the design and access statement. So I'm not sure off the top of my head, but certainly as part of the documentation we submit for planning, we will give information on what we're proposing, and then of course consult with the local authority and the transport officers. So I don't have that answer right now. You know, either follow up and we can let you know our thoughts if you'd like to send an email directly, or you know, wait until the planning application is submitted and then you'll have a chance to comment on the proposal, you know, looking at the design and access statement.
Thank you. And in terms of the community benefits, a question about what the limits of the community would be, whether this would be limited to Sedgeford or Fring or Eachtham.
We're not sure yet, and you know, I see the Q&A answer coming in, and I just encourage anybody who has suggestions about how we can offer the best benefit to the most people, you know, do contact us, email in, and make some suggestions. So if you've got any specific queries or suggestions about what we can do, then please, you know, you're more than welcome to liaise with us directly, and you know, we can consider where the best sort of tangible value can be placed. So completely open to suggestions.
And Ashley, could you provide a few more details about the battery storage aspect of the scheme?
Sure. So there is battery storage included. We are looking at a 10 megawatt hour battery storage capacity. So generally speaking, that is running on two 2-hour batteries with 5 megawatt containers installed.
Thank you. We've also had a message from a resident in Fring who lives approximately a mile from the site, and who had, unfortunately didn't receive a leaflet about this consultation. So that, I suppose they're concerned that some of the local residents may not have been made aware of this consultation.
I believe with the circulation, we looked at a 1 kilometre radius and sent letters out, if I'm not mistaken, Michael. But
I think, sorry, actually, I think we did 1 mile, so they may just have been on the fringe or just outside that. And also this webinar was publicised in the local papers as well, and we also contacted all of the district ward councillor, the local MP, the parish council, and the neighbouring parish councils as well, who've all been made aware.
Sure. Okay.
But apologies to that resident and any residents of Fring if you were missed off from
yeah.
that.
Well, what I would say is, if you know of anybody that has missed out on this and missed out on the opportunity to join the consultation, you know, please do share the website sedgefordhallsolar.co.uk with them. Encourage them to contact us, to engage with us. You know, I'm happy to do you know, any additional calls or video calls if needed. You know, we do want to hear the opinion of people locally. So you know, it certainly wasn't our intention to miss anybody out who would have wanted to come. You know, we reached out with leaflets and through a number of sort of media sources. So you know, please do direct people to the website. We'd love to hear from them.
And as you said earlier, Ashley, this isn't the end of the consultation by any means. So there's still plenty of opportunity for anybody who's interested to get in touch with their opinions on the scheme.
Yeah, and there'll be a recording. So you know, I think you know, if people are directed to the website, they can still you know, obtain the information that we're giving, and you know, hopefully we're giving a fairly comprehensive overview on what we're looking to do here. So certainly, you know, there will be plenty of opportunity for anybody that wasn't aware and has subsequently been made aware to be able to have their input and comment.
Thank you. That sort of completes all of the questions that we've received so far. But we're all very happy to stay on in case anything else occurs, or if there are any further questions. A further question about the battery storage, Ashley. Will the battery storage be available to support in the event that there are local blackouts or brownouts with the power supply?
That's a very good question. There are a range of services that the battery storage will provide, and I believe Black Start is a, as they call it in the technical term, is an available sort of function of the battery. But I wouldn't expect, if you have a power out, I wouldn't be relying on the battery storage, unfortunately, to be able to provide power locally. I don't think it works like that. It will be providing other services, but no, I don't think it will specifically keep the lights on in the event that there is a blackout.
And how large are the storage containers, specifically in terms of their height?
That's a very good question. I mean, I think they're the size of a typical 40-foot container, but let me just bring up the specifications and I can be a bit more exact. Okay. So I'm just looking at the, sorry for the delay. So the total height, I make it as, it will all be under 3 meters. So it's the same as the solar, all the equipment will be under 3 meters. But with the battery storage, I would, you know, assume a sort of typical 40-foot container.
Is 40 foot the length of the container?
Correct. Correct. So the length of the container, this is all approximate. We don't know, you know, just to highlight, we haven't confirmed the exact tech that we'll be using. And certainly when it gets to actually building the project, you know, if we're successful through the determination, it will be, you know, it could be another year from now. And a lot of it will depend on what is, you know, available for procurement. But yeah, the measurement I've got for the container is 2.9 high and 12 meters in length.
Thank you. And just a further question about noise. I can't remember if during your presentation you were specifically talking about any potential for noise from the inverters, but will there be any local noise from the cooling fans for these battery storage containers?
So I believe there is some noise. I believe the noise from the battery storage will be you know, similar to the noise from the inverters. That's my understanding. But as I mentioned, you know, all of the noise before we can even, you know, start working and getting any boots on the ground for this, we'll have to be providing acoustic studies, and the local authority will make sure that everything we're doing is within a threshold to be set. So, you know, the question is, are you going to hear noise locally? I mean, I don't think there's anybody close enough that will be impacted by it. But as I say, we will need to conduct acoustic surveys to satisfy the council on that.
Thank you. And a question about traffic routing again. You mentioned the road you intend to use is to the south. The Fring-Inmere Road runs east to west. Where are you actually going to bring in road traffic?
Yeah, thanks for that question. And I did mention the presentation. The access is certainly going to be on that road, but the route of it, we are still working through to figure out a proposal that is going to have the least impact. So you know, any suggestions on how you think would be the least impact way to bring the traffic in and out, we're all open to, but certainly our transport consultants will be advising us for the submission for the planning application, and then we'll need to be consulting with the local authority. So I'm sorry we don't have an answer for that right now, but you know, do keep an eye on the documents that we submit as part of the planning application. You'll have you know, plenty of opportunity to be able to advise. But yeah, I mean, I've seen another Another question, another comment coming in saying there's only one road, and I mean that's right. You know, that road is going to be used, but what I'm saying is we don't know the direction of the traffic, where it's coming from, to be able to get to that road. So you know, we will submit a full traffic management plan. I mean, clearly, you know, we're going to have to use that road that we're intending to access from, but you know, where the traffic comes through, what the route is, will need to be worked out.
Thank you. Another question on the wildlife impact. Tamsin, perhaps this one's for you. A question about whether the site will actually be beneficial to wildlife, given that a large proportion of the site will be covered in photovoltaic panels. How will the development actually be beneficial to wildlife?
Yes, I think the fact that at the moment it is intensively managed farmland, which does have a very low ecological benefit within the fields themselves, although it does have benefit, you know, within the hedges and the woodland that has native trees and shrubs that support native wildlife. I mean, I think the area is used. I think the main wildlife that it does support is the farmland birds, which is why there is the proposal to manage the land to the north sympathetically for those birds, which will include skylark plots, which is where there are plots 16 metres squared within the agricultural land that are left undrilled so that they provide food and nesting opportunities for skylark. And that's a recognised way to encourage those birds. I think also through sort of intensive continual agricultural land use, land gradually deteriorates, and by taking it out of that production for a period of time, it you know, it just gives that land, it's like a fallow stage for that land. I think the other things that we're introducing, the thickened hedgerows, which, you know, often in land that is intensively agriculture, and the hedgerows deteriorate, they become gappy and thin because they're no longer really required for stock containment. So in planting those up to sort of 5 metres wide with shrubs, which is a very useful ecological habitat, I think it increasingly recognised how important it is. And by establishing those corridors that wildlife can move along, then that enhances the landscape. There are also mammals that are likely to be using that landscape just for foraging and access routes to foraging locations, such as hares and badgers. And there will be mammal gates within the security fence to allow them to continue to do that. Again, another recognised way of providing for those animals. They do find those routes through, surprisingly. So yeah, I think it's often, because agricultural land is often seen as the wider rural environment, it's considered that it is good for wildlife, but often the fields themselves, the agricultural land itself isn't. It's the peripheral areas that are the most benefit, and we will be enhancing those features.
Thank you, Tamsin. And just another question in terms of the site, is anything actually planned to be grown underneath the panels? And if so, what will that be and how will it be managed?
Yes. We sow underneath panels with a shade mix, a shade tolerant wildflower and grass seed mix, which isn't generally as varied as the species rich grassland around the edges where there's more light, but it does support a variety of species. And then that can either be managed by cutting or by grazing, which will be a matter of what's available, I think, at the time that the site is implemented.
Thank you. A question about land use as well. The UK is having to import increasing amounts of food, which is becoming more expensive as a result of Brexit. Shouldn't we be using farmland in this country for food production rather than power generation?
Yeah, I could probably take up on this one. I mean, I don't think it's beneficial getting into a political debate at this stage about it. But certainly I would say solar farms take up actually in proportion a small amount of land, and we addressed this point in our Q&As on the website, and there was quite a good analogy in there that showed to produce 10 gigawatts of solar power, which is enough for 3 million homes. We would only need 0.1% of the UK land area, so that's around 60,000 acres. To put this into perspective, it's estimated there are 660,000 acres of land, which is more than 1% of land which is used for golf courses in the UK. So, you know, at the end of the day, you know, we're passionate in what we do. We're all in this industry for the right reason, because we believe that clean energy is going to help us get out of a real situation and help us get a grips on the emissions and the damage that we're doing to this world. So you know, we're firm believers that solar is a key mix towards the energy security and the targets that we've set.
Thank you. A question about the whether there will be a fence around the proposed site, and how high will that fence be?
That's a very good question. So I'm just going to pull up, and again, we haven't finalized anything. So I'm just going to have a look now. I may need to come back to that unless you've got that to hand. I mean, I would say it's going to be no more than 3 meters, which is, you know, the same as the array of the panels. But I mean, we're yet to provide, you know, exact details of what we're going to be installing here. So, you know, I think at this stage we can just say it's not going to be any higher than 3 meters.
So in line with the panels and the battery storage.
And the other infrastructure, absolutely.
Thank you. I can't see any more questions coming in, so perhaps it's a good time to leave it there, and just to reiterate that if anybody has any questions after this webinar that occur to them, they can get in touch either by emailing regeneratepower@quantumpr.co.uk or going to the, oh, sorry, we have had one more question. Will the photovoltaic panels be fixed, or will they rotate?
Very good question. Again, very good question. And these, the proposal we'll be submitting is for a fixed system. Did you catch that? Hello?
We can still hear you, Ashley.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure.
And just to let everybody know, we do have feedback forms on the website as well. So if you were to go to www.sedgefordhallsolar.co.uk/consultation, we have a feedback form there so that we can collate all of your opinions. So as I say, if anything occurs to you after this webinar, then please do get in touch, and the team will be more than happy to answer your questions. Just one final question about the fence. A 3 meter high fence is going to be a lot higher than hedgerows. How does that work?
I'll answer that. So my intention wasn't to say that it's going to be a 3 meter fence. We need to design a cross section and show as part of the planning application what kind of fencing we're going to propose. But I was saying that it's going to be no more than 3 meters. So again, if you don't mind, you know, I appreciate your comments on it, and you know, it's a good question. If you don't mind just bearing with us while we finalize our designs and put together the cross sections, and you know, as part of the planning application, all this information will be made available. So keep an eye out for the planning application when it's submitted.
Thanks, Ashley. So I think we'll wrap it up there, and we will of course post this video on the website early next week, together with Ashley's presentation as well, so you can read a bit more detail there should you need to. And just to say thank you very much for joining us today to hear more about Regenerate's proposals for the Sedgeford Hall solar farm.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.